And with that, I want to begin with a bracha of a refuah shlema v'kreva, complete healing and recovery to anyone who's in any situation affected by this virus. Some people are struggling for their lives. Rachmana litzlan, the Eibishter should help them. Complete refuah shlema v'kreva. And for the rest of us, we should should be prevented that we shouldn't even get it in the first place. And obviously, we have to clearly listen to, as halacha and Torah and the Rebbe Chassidus tells us, to rabbonim and to doctors and to health authorities. And they're telling us clearly that it's extremely contagious. And we need to stay home, which is why we're doing classes online. So that's just as an opening bracha, and may this class be a schus to that as well. But going back to what I was saying, at the same time, we were not taught that we cower in fear and we panic or hysteria. Yes, there's this destabilization that's happening, but we were trained as the Jews 3,800 years already, that when there's a challenge, we have to rise to the occasion. And rising to the occasion means that we have to do whatever we can, in addition to whatever health-wise and medical-wise, is to bolster people's spirit, our own, our families, and anyone we can reach online or any other way that we're communicating these days. So my focus of my message is going to be what the Rebbe taught us, what we do in situations like this, that how we become stronger even during a challenging matzav. So I want to tell a story. Since this week is going to be Rosh Chodesh Nisan on Thursday, and then Friday is Beis Nisan, as you all may know, Beis Nisan is 100 years from the Rebbe Rashab's Histalkus Yortzeit. 1920, on the second day of Nisan, it was a Motzei Shabbos Vayikra that year, and this year is now 2020. So Friday will be 100 years when the Rebbe Rashab passed away in Rostov in Russia. Immediately, the Rebbe became, the Frierdiker Rebbe became the next Rebbe, because he was the only son. So even though he sat Shiva, but officially his leadership was assumed on that same day, Beis Nisan. Okay, so this interesting thing, the Rebbe Rashab passed away from typhus. It was an epidemic then that was running around, typhus, high fever and other symptoms. Some similarities actually to coronavirus. Okay, Rachmana litzlan, the Rebbe Rashab was nostalgic, that what the Eibishter wanted. It was Shivim Shana, it was the 70th year. The Frierdiker Rebbe, a little while later, contracted the same disease, typhus. And he literally was suffering from high fever. He was in a semi-comatose state and very difficult to breathe. And it was a real challenge. Chassidim were desperate because they had enough with tragedy. They didn't need another one. And they were davening and mispal and so on. Listen to this, an interesting thing. The Ragat Shover Gon, Rabbi Yosef Rosen, who came from Chabad family, the Chassidim went to him and asked him to give a bracha, to advice. I mean, of course, they went to many people, but one of them was the Ragat Shover Gon. The Ragat Shover, in his classic style, was a Gon. He was a genius, a prodigy. And what the Ragat Shover said, or wrote, he said that in halacha, when you want to kasher something, like now we kasher, for example, our stoves or other things for Pesach, how do you kasher? You don't can't just wash it. You have to heat it to high temperatures till it gets white heat. Why? Because it's the only way to change the mitzias of something, to change something that exists, to change it into another reality, something that was treif, or something that wasn't kosher Pesach, or something that was whatever it may have been. You can't just clean it in a regular way with soap and water. You have to heat it, because heat, al pi halacha, changes the chefza, it changes the reality of the object that you heated, and now it became a new mitzias, a new existence. And this is what he said. He said, since the Frierdiker Rebbe has now gone over from being a son of a Rebbe to becoming a Rebbe, his high fever is a form of high heat that's necessary to change him from a chassid into a Rebbe. So the Ragat Shover, in his own way, not even a Chassidish language, is more nigladik, halacha language actually, explained a negative into a positive. Now, obviously, we all would prefer the Frierdiker Rebbe didn't have fever and didn't have typhus and didn't have asakon and danger. But this is how a Jew thinks. When the Eden were in Mitzrayim, we're going to be celebrating Pesach in a few weeks, 2 weeks. When they were in Mitzrayim, you could imagine, it was a genocide. It was like Nazi Europe in the worst possible way. Besides slave labor, there was murder, there was oppression. It says they were suffering terribly. And yet, the Pasuk says in Shmois, Keshayanu Esam, as they were oppressed, in direct proportion came Yirbe v'chen Yifritz. In direct proportion to how much they were pressured and hurt and oppressed, they flourished and they thrived. Now again, I want to say it for the fourth time. We don't want these things. We don't ask for them. We'd rather have the Geula Abitis Vashlema and everyone be healthy and healed all over the world, and we shouldn't have a whole tzara. However, once we are in it, whatever God's mysterious ways and plans, the way we react is we don't run away. We say, okay, this is the situation. How will we thrive and flourish? How will we take the fever? How will we take the heat and turn it into a new Metzias? Meaning it makes us stronger. When you want to see what people are really made of, you challenge them. It's the only time you see the greatest strengths. So I want to say to all of you, as I say to myself at the opening here, this isn't a time just to talk about things. It's not just a time to panic and to say what's going to be. It's a time to demonstrate for the world, for anyone you know, your families, your friends, for each other, and obviously for the Rebbe, that we were trained well, that we will rise to the occasion. And even though we may have inside sometimes fears and concerns, and everybody does, I have family members that are not well. We all have challenges, but at the same time, we're soldiers and we're Chassidim of the Rebbe, and we're going to take this challenge and turn it into something greater. How do you do that? Very simple. Each of you and each of us has to do extra, double and triple to be kinder, to be nicer, to be more gentle, to be more loving, to call a friend and say, how are you today? I know these may be obvious things, and maybe we do it anyway, but now we have to do it with even double and triple strength. Every time there was a challenge by the Rebbe, he right away turned it into a new campaign. There was a 6-day war in Israel. The Rebbe turned it into the campaign of Tefillin. There was the war in the Yom Kippur War, Mezuzah, Neshek, Taras Mishpach, Kashrus. All the Mivtzoyim all came from a challenge. It didn't just come out of nowhere, because we add light whenever there's more dark. So you have to think creatively, each of you girls, think creatively, how can I use this time to do something extra mitzvah and so on. It still goes hand in hand with being careful and health-wise and following all those instructions, not a contradiction. And ultimately, there's no question that this fever, this disease, the pandemic, and all its impact is going to create a new Metzias, both in our personal lives and in collectively in our family lives, communal lives, and ultimately the world over. Because our message is that this challenge will only make us greater people. And today we can use technology like we're using right now and other methods to get this message across through social media, through other things. I'm not sure what you're allowed to use, what you're not allowed to use, what you're doing, what you're not doing. But if you, whatever it is that you're doing, make sure that you include in it, sending messages of kindness, of Torah, of Chassidus, something upbeat. I just began, as a result of this, just 2 days ago, a new project called Your Spiritual Daily Antidote. It's a 3-minute video, and it's going viral all over, no pun intended. It's 3 minutes of a message from Chassidus, from Torah, for everybody about spiritual strengthening, how you strengthen yourself. And I plan to do this, mitzvah Hashem, as long as it's necessary. Just give you an example. I'm plugging it in a way. Yes, you can use it, you can spread it, you can send it around, share it. We have it on WhatsApp, we have it on YouTube, whatever the places are. And you can easily access it at our website, meaningfullife.com. That's the ad for this class, my announcement. But my point is really the practical one. It's doing something that shows that we take the negative and turn it into some form of a positive, while doing everything that we need to be careful and praying and blessing all those that need our refuah shlema. So that's my opening words, and taken straight from the story with the Frierdiker Rebbe when he had typhus. Leah Leinu, Frierdiker Rebbe did recover in 1920 and became the leader that he was the leader for 30 years, 1920 through 1950. When he came to America in 1940, 80 years ago, and 70 years ago, the Frierdiker Rebbe was Nostalgic, and the Rebbe took over, and we're now 70 years from the Rebbe's Nesius. So we have 100 years from the Rebbe Rashab and the Frierdiker Rebbe, the Nesius, and now 70 from the Rebbe. So these are unique times. We're coming up also to Yud Aleph Nisan, the Rebbe's birthday, and therefore, these are special days, even though we would have loved, it would have been regular Simcha Dika days, preparing for Pesach, being with our families, not having all these concerns, not even being quarantined. But this is what the Eibishter planned for us. And that's the next point I want to make. We don't control our destinies. You control how you're going to react to your destiny. If the Eibishter wants and says, now I want you to be at home, it's not up to us. He wants us to be at home. And we have Pesach also has a precedent for it. You all know the Pasuk. What happened the night of Pesach, the first night of Pesach? In Parshas Boy, Moshe Rabbeinu instructing the Jews, that Hashem said, tonight will be the night beginning of your Geula. I want you to make a Korban Pesach and eat it festively with your families. And tomorrow, the midday, we're going to leave Egypt once and for all and forever. Geulas Mitzrayim, Yitzias Mitzrayim. And that's why we celebrate Pesach now, over 3,300 years ago. But Moshe adds one posuk. He says, "Va'atem al teitzu mepesach beisam ad boker," and you should not leave the doors of your homes till the morning. Why? Because there was a magefa outside. There was an epidemic, a pandemic. The Eibishter was taking, Rachmana litzlan, the firstborn of all the Egyptians. This was the last of the 10 makkos, of the 10 plagues. And the Egyptians refused to let the Jews out. As I said before, they were like Nazis. So there was no Rachmanis on them. They were cruel, vicious, inhumane. And finally, the Eibishter, the last straw, was the Eibishter said, Makkos Bcheres. But he said, you stay at home, because outside is now an epidemic. Now, you'd think the Jews stayed home and they were terrified. You know, out there, blood is being shed, people are dying. There were cries. You can imagine what kind of night it was that night in Egypt, in all the homes, where it says, Ein Bayis. I don't want to even repeat it. There was no home. There wasn't someone that died. The Jews, no, but the Jews were calm because Hashem said to them, you stay home and you celebrate with your families. I will protect you. But you can't go outside, because outside is now a time for retribution. So you think about it. How does it translate today? No, I want to make it clear. We don't want anyone dying. Not Jews, for sure, and not non-Jews. It's an epidemic for everyone. But you see a certain lesson. There's a time when the Eibishter wants us to be at home, whatever reason. Not easy. We all know it's not easy to be at home all day and quarantined. But again, we don't look at it as only a negative. It also has a positive opportunities. Maybe it's a time to get connected closer with your siblings, with your parents. Maybe it's a time to read something. Maybe it's a time for introspection, to think. It's a time to connect with friends in new ways, appreciate what we took for granted. You know, people today say, I wish I could just say hello, good morning to the person I see every day in my office. Even someone I don't even know. Even that people are missing. People are missing basic human social contact. So yes, they're telling us to socially distance, but at the same time, spiritually and soulfully, we have to be closer than ever. There are times where our closeness comes through gathering, physically gathering, and sometimes Hashem has a different plan. We don't know God's plans. No one expected this. No one wanted this. No one wants it. But that's what Hashem planned. So as a result, we have to embrace it. The Rebbe once, Rabbi Lau, the chief Rabbi Lau of Israel, the former chief Rabbi Lau, the older one, was once by the Rebbe in Chassidus. He came to America for the first time. He was a rabbi in Netanya at the time. And he came to see the Rebbe. It was 1974, right after the Yom Kippur War. I heard the story from him. He looked at the Rebbe. The Rebbe asked him, what's the mood in Israel? He said, the mood in Israel is terrible. Remember, it was right after the Yom Kippur War. If you may be aware that after the 6-day war, in contrast, it was euphoria. There were very few casualties. In 6 days, Israel tripled. It was mamish mefsim, nisim gluim, open miracles. Yom Kippur War was a very different story. There was a story with a lot of arrogance. I don't want to go into speaking negative about anybody. but they were arrogant. They thought they were overconfident, and there were a lot more casualties, unfortunately. So the mood in Israel was very depressed. So he told the Rebbe, mentions ein sehr herabgefallen. People are very depressed. And people are saying, Ma yiyeh, what's going to be? Was wird sein? The way he told me the story, he said the Rebbe grabbed his wrist like this, and his Rebbe said to him, Rabbi Lau, in Yiddish the Rebbe said, bei Eden fragt man nicht, was wird sein, man fragt, was geht man tun? Jews don't ask what will be, we ask, what are we going to do about it? Not ma yiyeh, ma naseh. What are we going to do? You know why? Because we don't know what will be. That's the question of a victim. A victim asks, what's going to be? You throw up your hands and you're in desperation. I don't know what's going to be. A Jew is a leader. And even in a situation we don't know what's going to be, we ask, what are we going to do? How are we going to swim forward? How are we going to forge ahead? That's the way we think. They say there are three types of people. People who make things happen, people who ask what happened. People who make things happen, people who watch things happen, and people who ask what happened. We were trained to make things happen. So even when we're now in a situation where we be at home, in some way, quarantined, sequestered, whatever the words are, we have to use it and be creative and make things happen in some way or another. So those are the two main messages I wanted to share in this particular time. I received many questions from you, many questions that they sent me. So I'm going to go through the questions in some type of orderly way. I hope to try to organize it. My real goal here is to be helpful. I'm not here to preach. I'm not here to give a drasha, a speech, and demonstrate oratory skills. I'm here to show that we're all in this together, and we have to look to Torah and Chassidus and the Rabbi for direction and guidance, how to get through a challenging time, and how to become stronger people, and how to show that we're leaders. We make things happen. So that's why I think it's a very healthy and valuable thing to hear your questions, your thoughts, your feelings. And I hope we'll leave time at the end of this program to get more questions if any of you want to weigh in. So if you have anything, as was said at the outset, please text it, and hopefully it'll come over to me. And I will begin now with these questions. Okay. Interestingly, I just want to point out that I saw a bunch of questions of yours are connected to Moshiach, which actually I was very touched by that. Just opening up my text in case I have to check it out. Okay. So I was very touched by that because many people are not thinking about Moshiach right now. They're thinking more about their lives, survival. How do we get through this? What are we going to do? Say a kapitel tilim for somebody in need. So the fact that you're thinking about it is a very good sign to me, and I will obviously address it. There were other questions, some related, some unrelated. So I'll try to, as I said, bunch them together in some way. I'll begin with a question that someone asks, is it okay to be angry at Hashem? Now, I'll just elaborate. I assume the question isn't just a theoretical one. It's also regarding our situation, where, Rahman al-Islam, there are people who died because of the coronavirus. There are people who are in a very desperate situation as we speak. Again, refuah shlema to them all. There are people who are not desperate but have symptoms. And what's going on here? After thousands of years of Golus, we're still dealing with another thing. Weren't we told that Mashiach is going to come already? We'll soon address that. So is it right to be angry at Hashem? So it's a very good question, because many of us would say, you have no right to be angry. There's one God, and whatever he does is for the good. But interestingly, you see that Avram Avinu, when the Eberster was destroying the city of Sodom, these were wicked people. We're not talking about righteous people. Avram Avinu complained to God and said, how could you do such a thing? Will the judge of the entire world not do justice? We're talking about wicked, corrupt people who deserved everything they got. But Avram was a Baal Chesed and was looking for some schus, and maybe there's someone that's in Sodom that could be saved. The second incident is in Mitzrayim, the end of Parsha Shmos, after Moshe Rabbeinu sees the terrible suffering of the Yiddish people, of the Jews. He sees terrible suffering, really terrible suffering. What does Moshe do? So he turns to the Eibishter and says to him, Loma hireisa la'am hazeh. Why are you being cruel? Why are you doing evil, perpetrating cruelty on these people? Now, Pare was bathing, Rachmana litzlan. He was bathing in the blood of Jewish children. Pare. The Egyptians were a cruel people. Why is Moshe blaming a God? He should have said to God, why are you allowing them to do it? He blames the Eibishter. And he gets reprimanded for that. And yet, Hashem accepts his complaint, and it's documented in the Torah. It's not like ignored. It's documented until this day. We read it in Parshas Shmos. And the Eibishter afterwards says to him, you know what? The Ovis never complained like you did. But I did not reveal myself in my full glory like I will for you and for the Jews now. And I will reveal my Shem Havaya, my powerful, essential name, and you will redeem the Jewish people from this darkness. So my answer is this. Yes, it's okay to get angry, but not angry in an unhealthy way. This isn't like a little child that has a tantrum and says, God, what are you doing? Angry is you say to Hashem, I love you. I believe in you. The Jewish people have dedicated their lives with Mesiras Nefesh to you. How many of us have fallen in Kiddush Hashem, in the Holocaust, in pogroms, through history? So I'm imploring you, I'm begging you, with emotion and passion, please protect your children. Please don't let such a thing affect anybody. So the anger has to be a healthy form, I would call it passionate outcry to our Father in heaven. So I'm not angry like a tantrum or like you get angry at somebody who insulted you or angry for negative reason. We're talking about a passion that is healthy and driven by our love for God and by our belief that the Eibishter can redeem us and help us in any given situation. That's how I would answer that question. So we don't ignore it. Faith doesn't mean, oh, whatever you do, God, it's all great. No, something negative, we cry to God and say, Ad Mosai. We want the Geula, we want protection, we want to be healed. We don't want to have to suffer like this. We don't want to go through even one night or one moment of fear. Okay. Let me go to another question. What if after all this, Mashiach doesn't come? Everyone thinks he is coming. I'll just connect it with a few other Mashiach questions. If I will never understand Mashiach and Hashem till Mashiach comes, why is the answer always to learn about Mashiach if we are now bound to Machshava? Okay, so let me answer those two questions, and let me see if there's any other that. There's another question about Mashiach, but I'll talk about it soon. There's a third question that I want to throw into this. I want Mashiach to come, at the same time, I'm terrified. Of course, I want the bad in the world to end, but what type of life is a perfect life? And living forever scares me so much. Okay. Good. So let me ask you this. So first of all, the belief in Mashiach, we will be saying at the Seder, V'hi sha'am delonu, laviseinu. He. What does that mean? That the promise that Hashem gave us, and the Amunah, he also refers to the faith in Hashem's promises, will also help us endure and prevail in this situation. Because in every generation, we have our challenges, as the Hisha Amda says. Let me ask you a question. A very logical question. Let's put aside our feelings for a moment. The Jewish people began 3,800 years ago. That's when our journey began with Avram Avinu. How many different challenges did we go through in those years? Thousands. Tens of thousands. Avram went through his things, Yitzchak and Yaakov. Then, of course, the Jews in Egypt. Then later, after they came out to Eretz Yisrael, they had the wars they had to fight. Then they had Bais Rishon and Bais Sheni, both of them destroyed by the Babylonians, by the Romans. They dealt with the Persians, with the Greeks, with the Assyrians, with the Ottomans, with the Romans, you name it. We've had tzaras for thousands of years. It's only relatively new, since essentially 1950, when the Rebbe became a Rebbe 70 years ago, that we live in freedom. And we don't have to be afraid to give a class like this and someone's going to come and arrest us. Relatively new, fresh. We all grew up in it, so we take it for granted. But we all This was not the world that always been the same world like that, right? So it's not always been this way. So let's think about it for a second. And what happened? In every situation, as much as we suffered, we're still here. Every one of you, every one of us is a living miracle that we've lasted thousands of years. What are the odds that Avram and Sarah, who were promised that their children would spread like the stars all over the earth, would actually have a child called Yitzchak, and he would have a child, Yaakov, and on until we are here today with all our suffering. So for anyone to say today, how do I know if Mashiach is going to come? The promises were fulfilled. So we are absolutely, if you think for a moment, for sure they're going to be fulfilled. It hasn't happened yet. So to make a statement, what if it doesn't come? Mashiach is going to come. That's the promise and also the logic. God created the world for a purpose, and the purpose will be realized. However, we have setbacks. We have challenges. At times, the Baal Shem Tov gives a beautiful example that it's like a spiral staircase. You ever see a spiral staircase? When you walk up a regular staircase, so you see the destination. It may be distant, but it's a direct line of sight. A spiral staircase, you don't see the destination. Every time you keep turning, and you have to turn your back to the destination. By the time you get to the top, before you reach the pinnacle, you have to make one final turn. And where's your face? Where are your eyes when you make that turn? The other direction, completely opposite of the destination. And you could convince yourself, look, this is unfortunately the way the Eibishter made it, or fortunately, we don't always see the destination. So I say like this is a time where we have to strengthen our emunah. We have to realize that emotionally, yes, it's difficult, but we continue to forge ahead. What's our option? To lie down and die? To say, you know what, I give up? Is that an option? Is that a healthy option for a human being? I don't even want to mention it, but I know people think like that. So again, I go back to how we were trained. We were trained to see everything as we're forging ahead toward a better world, to a better place. Okay, so the Rebbe promised us this, but not just as a promise. The Rebbe said after thousands of years of hard work, we're now ready. We're ready to march to the end. Now, why this coronavirus suddenly out of the blue suddenly affected us all? I cannot answer that question. As I said earlier, we don't ask why. We don't ask what are we going to do. I'm sorry, we don't ask what's going to be. We ask what are we going to do. As far as the second question, if I will never understand Mashiach and Hashem till Mashiach comes, why is the answer always to learn about Mashiach? That's a wrong premise. You will understand. You could understand Mashiach. And I will give an example. This is an example I've given many times. Mashiach is not some abstract idea that in the future a man will come and build a temple in the Beis HaMikdash HaShlishi in Yerushalayim, and the world will have a perfect world. It's not that simple. Mashiach is the idea that life has a purpose, and that our material lives, and I'm using now the Rambam, he says, Lo yeh eiseh kol ha'elam el l'dases Hashem bulvad. The business of the world will be only to know Hashem. He doesn't say there's going to be lightning storm or thunderstorm, or there's going to be a change in nature. It's going to be a change in awareness. So let me ask you a question. You all are in your homes right now. The Rebbe many years ago, and I'm sure you've heard of this, said that every person should make their home into a migdash ma'at. It's a little mini mishkan. A home or your room, your bed, your chair, your belongings should have a dedication to something that's not just your own comfort, but for Hashem. You have a pushkin on your desk. You have a siddur. You have a chumash. You have a Haggadah. What does that do? The Rebbe explained, it elevates and makes your home into a mishkan. This way, it's a home where you sleep, you eat, you drink, you have shelter, you're with your family. To make your home, that is a Mashiach-dika behavior. You know why? Because you've taken a physical home, and what did you do? You introduced Hashem into the picture. You'll probably know the difference between Golus and Geula is one word, one letter. Goyla and Geula, Aleph. That means it's the same life that you're living right now, but all you're doing is introducing the Aleph of Hashem. You're sitting at your table and you're eating, or you're reading a book. If you introduce a vort, you say something a nice word to somebody at the table. You learn a word in Torah, a sicha. You've turned your table, you've put the aleph into a regular Golas table, you made it into a Geula Dika table. So Geula and Mashiach is not as crazy and fantastical as many people think. Imagine, now we're at home, but what would the streets around your house look like when Mashiach comes? They'll be the same streets, but you'll see in them a presence of the Eibishter. And I'll give one example from a beautiful letter I saw from the Rebbe to a dry cleaners, of all places, a guy who had a dry cleaners. What could the Rebbe write to him already? So the Rebbe says, everything in life is hashgacha pratis, divine providence. Even if you have, the fact that you run a dry cleaners means there's a lesson in that for you. And the Rebbe goes on and says what the lesson is. You know what the lesson is? The Rebbe says, what's a cleaners? We all use cleaners. You wear a garment, you wear it once, twice, 3 times, 4 times, a beautiful new garment. Let's say you get yourself a new garment for Pesach. After a few times, it starts getting soiled, it starts getting wrinkled, it starts getting dirty. At some point, if you're a mental Kabbalah Batisha person, you're going to not be able to wear it. So what do? Most people would say, okay, at some point you have to throw it out. No, comes the innovation of cleaners. You bring it to the cleaners. What does the cleaners do? The cleaners, the first thing he does, he puts it in water. And not just water, but warm water. The next thing he does, he mixes the water with chemicals. So it gets rid of stains and wrinkles and so on. Then what does he do? He takes it out, puts it under a heavy press, and now it's fresh new garment. You pick it up, you could wear it again and again, and the process can be repeated many times. The Rebbe continues and says, what's the lesson? Neshama shenesata bi tahirehi. Every morning we say in davening, the soul you've given me is pure, like a pure, fresh, new garment, right? But then life takes over. We have disappointments. Our heart can be broken. We can be hurt. Many different things in life break us, and in some way they soil us, they wrinkle us, we get somewhat dirty, and so on. So you think it's a one-way street. Okay, your neshama that was once pure, God forbid, is no longer pure. Says, no. The lesson is, take the neshama and immerse it in water. What is water? Teira. Ein mayim ela teira. Water is teira. Learn teira. It refreshes your neshama. But not just regular water. Warm water. Chmimus, varmkeit. Cold water is apathetic. Cold is indifferent. Not cold and detached, but with warmth, with passion, with feeling. Then mix chemicals. Every mitzvah is another chemical. Each chemical deals with another soil or another wrinkle and so on. And then put it under a press, a heavy press. What is that? Kabbalas oil. The word Kabbalas oil, Malchus Shamayim, means you accept the yoke of heaven. Oil is a yoke. It's like a press. You feel the accountability and the blessing and the gift that you answer to a higher authority. And this refreshes your garment, your neshama, like new. So this is a beautiful lesson. But I'll tell you what happened after I read this letter. I was walking up Kingston Avenue, not these days, but then, and I was looking at every dry cleaners. How many are there on Kingston Avenue? There's one between Empire and Montgomery, and almost every block. And I looked at the dry cleaners. I never looked at a cleaners the same way again. I saw the cleaners the way, when Moshiach comes, the cleaners will be a lesson to us of how we can refresh ourselves. Now imagine everything in the world becomes a lesson like that. The grocery store, the bakery store shops, the pizza shops. The places we all will, Mitzvah Hashem, be able to go back to soon. All these will be seen not just as utilities for us to buy food or to clean garments or other purposes. You'll see the divine lesson. You'll see the aleph that we put into Geula and we turn into Geula. So I wanted to elaborate because this is something each of us can do now as well. When we see something, always look and say, where is the godliness in this, the elokus? So to say, I can't understand Mashiach, no, yes, there's many things we can't understand, but this we could, and the Rebbe charged us. What did the Rebbe say? Increase in goodness and kindness. You add goodness and kindness, you're bringing a little piece of Mashiach into your lives. Let me go to some more questions. At this time, and also just in general, when we are with the same people, our family, and your parents are someone you can get frustrated with, how are we supposed to react and not call them names as well as our siblings? Well, I appreciate that question. I'm sure we all have this challenge. I'll just repeat it in my own words. When you're, it's enough when you're in the morning and the evening with your family. Now we are stuck with our families all day, which on one hand is beautiful, but on the other hand, you get frustrated. How? Are you able to hear me, by the way? I just saw it was, yeah? Okay. So it's a very good question. Everyone heard the question? Just nod with your head. Okay. So the question is a great question. The practical answer is very straightforward. The answer is, number one, we're hopefully a little menschliche people. Let's just think of the matzah of the situation. Someone asked me to repeat the question. I'll repeat the question. You're now stuck in your home all day with your siblings and your parents. So it's inevitable we're going to get frustrated. How do you control yourself and react by not calling people names and not being hurtful and saying something abusive and so on? The answer is very straightforward without any deep things. We're in a time of crisis right now. God forbid, there are people with fever, there are people with coughs. I don't want to spell out all the symptoms. So first of all, let's grow up a bit. This is not an easy time. So if you're particularly frustrated, go into another room in your house. I'm not going to say bang your head in the wall, chas v'shalom, but talk to yourself. Maybe get on the phone with a friend. Find someone where you can vent your frustration. The last thing you want to be doing now is showing any intolerance and frustration at your own loved people, your loved ones. The last thing we want to show the Eibishter that. So yes, it's called self-control. I'm sorry to say it, but sometimes there's no magic tricks. The trick is very straightforward. Think it's a serious situation. It's a magefa. Listen, there's an epidemic going on. And the Eibishter will help, it will protect us all. But don't take it for granted. So if you have a particular situation, you're frustrated, either go talk to a sibling or talk to a friend or find someone where you can release it. The last thing, do me a favor, do yourself a favor, do the Eibishter a favor. Do not release at this time is the last thing we want to do. Now we're human beings. I understand we're all going to have moments of frustration. Everybody understands that. But as much as you can control it, this itself is part of the Aveda now, part of our challenge. So we all understand the challenge. I'm not dismissing it. I'm not saying what's the matter with you. We're all that way. You're cooped up with somebody. People get on each other's nerves. So we have to find ways to release it and vent in some other way. And thank God we have technology. We have a phone. We have text. We can do other things. Try to find them and say, you know what, my mother or my father just upset me. Help me walk me through, help me hold my hand. You can text a friend and say, let's just talk this through. And I'm sure they'll tell you I have the same situation. And when you finally get over your own frustration, maybe go over to your mother or father or to your sibling and give them a hug, if that's allowed now, and say, I love you. We are in this together. Anything I can do to help you. So not only don't get frustrated, actually channel it and turn it into something positive. Pesach is coming. I'm sure your parents can use help. I'm sure your siblings could use help. We need to be extra loving now. And yes, it's expected. You'll say, I'm a kid. I get frustrated. What do you want from me? We're not blaming anybody. But that doesn't mean you can't rise to the occasion. So you'll be a nicer person. The worst thing in the world that you could look at yourself in the mirror and say, hey, I was a little nicer than I usually am. Okay, next question. How do you come to a point to let Chassidus really affect your life? Okay, this is a general question, and it's a good one at this point in time. It's one of the things I work on a lot. Basically, you have to ask one question. Always one question only. Whatever you learn in the parsha, in a sicha, a teacher teaches you something, ask one question. What personal lesson does it have for me? Why should I care? What lesson does it have for me? I mentioned before the pasuk that Moshe told the Eden, don't leave your home till the morning. So if you read that pasuk, you say, okay, it's a nice pasuk. What relevance does it have to me? Today we have a relevance. What's the relevance? because that's what Hashem wants us to build and fortify our homes now, fortify our inner lives. Anything you learn, that's how you make Chassidus affect your life. You ask, this idea of Chassidus, what is it relevant to me? I just explained Moshiach in a very relevant way, I believe. Not just as an idea concept. Yes, look at a dry cleaners, look at an ice cream, look at a cupcake, look at another item and say, where is the personal lesson? Where's the elokus, the godliness in this? As soon as you ask that question, it starts affecting your life. You have your room, you have your bed, you have your desk, you have your chair. How will you use it for something that's more ruchniistic, something more spiritual, something more sublime? It's a simple way of asking. The Rebbe once said it in the Yechidus to Rabbi David Raskin. He said, the way to make Chassidus affect your life, ask yourself, what is the personal, you're learning Chassidus about the greatness of Torah. The greatness of Torah. The next thing is, what does it mean to you? Sit down and learn a piece of Torah. We're going to be experiencing now Mitzrayim, Yetzias Mitzrayim. I hope to do a program next week, actually, to go in detail of how we can personalize it. What's the first lesson from Yetzias Mitzrayim? I'm sure you all know. Mitzrayim is not just a land called Egypt. Mitzrayim means limitations, constraints. Do any of you have limitations and constraints? For example, fears, inhibitions, other things that bother you. This is your personal Mitzrayim. That's Chassidus affecting your life. How do I get myself out of my own Mitzrayim? How do I get myself out of my frustration against my parents? That's Yetzias Mitzrayim in your personal life. So someone's writing a question now, but does everything in Chassidus apply to every time of your life? The answer generally yes, but let's be practical. You can't be doing everything at all the times. Right now, we're talking about Yetzias Mitzrayim, so we talk about Mitzrayim. If I start talking now about Shavuos, and about Sukkot, and about Simchas Torah, and about Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, and Chanukah, Purim, and Tisha B'Av, the message will be completely lost. So we have to look at it this way. Everything in Chassidus has a lesson. Everything in Torah has a lesson. Torah meloshen hera. However, you have to look right now. Hey, we're now in a situation where we're quarantined in our homes. We're in a situation where we can't go to school, where we can't go to work, and so on. So then you look at Chassidus. What does Chassidus have to say about this? You always have to fit Chassidus to your life situation, your personal life situation, or your communal life situation, or the family life, and so on. So another question in this context, I think comparing the situation in Mitzrayim is because it was only a one-time thing. First of all, we say Yetzias Mitzrayim is all the time. The whole day v'deir, in every generation, every day the Alter Rebbe adds, we have to see ourselves leaving Mitzrayim. That's why we mention it every day in davening. So the concept of Mitzrayim, we left Egypt once physically, but spiritually, we're always trying to get out of our limitations. Okay, let me go to another question. Next question is, if the Torah was given by Har Sinai, then could the Yidden have looked into the Torah to see the future? And also, this is kind of like the free choice question, but why would Hashem be upset if everything was planned out and written in the Torah, for example, when Moshe hit the rock? Okay, this is a big question. I'm just going to answer it briefly because I want to give more time for more questions. It says that Moshe Rabbeinu, at the end of Zeis HaBrocha, it says that Moshe was shown by the Eibishter ad hayam ha'achre. He stood on the mountain and he was able to see all the way to the great sea. So the Medrash says that, read ad hayem ha'achre, that he was able to see to the future, to the last day when Moshiach would come. So there's no question in the Torah lies the future. But only Moshe Rabbeinu and people like that could see it. So for all practical purposes, we can't look in the Torah and see the future, and we were not told to do so, and it's not even a healthy thing to do. We have to figure out what we must do now to build a better future. It's not our job to be stargazers and crystal ball people who look into the future. Our job is to figure out how to build a better future. As far as your question, why would Hashem be upset if everything was planned and written? Well, look, if I love my child, and I definitely do, and I say to my child, please be as good a person as you can, I don't control their behavior. And they have the free will. And the free will may be sometimes they'll choose something negative. And then I'll be upset. You're upset when something bad happens. So the fact that the Eibishter and the Torah plan things out, it didn't take away free will. And therefore the Eibishter is upset because when you do it, you're doing something he's not happy with. Now this is a bigger question about free will, of the Eibishter knows everything, how's their free will. Briefly, God knowing something does not mean that it affects us. You could know a lot of things and not necessarily affect that which is going to happen. But I want to move on. What is the point of being tznius? I see a lot of these questions are not necessarily related to this time period, but fine, good question. The word tznius, and I think I've spoken to Beis Rivkah girls a number of times about this. There's a big mistake in people's understanding of tznius. People think the word tznius means ugly, that there's an ugly part of me and I have to cover it up, or it's provocative, and so on. The word tznius is actually a beautiful word. It comes from a pasuk in the Torah. Hatzna leches im Hashem elekecha. You shall walk modestly with your God. It's actually a pasuk about the kohanim, not about men and women, that they should walk modestly in the Beis HaMikdash. The word modesty is very different than many people's perception of tznius. Tznius, people right away, oh, tznius, where's the tznius police? Am I covered up? Am I dressed properly? Am I provoking anybody? Are they going to get upset? Are they going to punish me? This is the reaction. Let's rephrase it. Let's revisit and reclaim the meaning. Tznius means you're a dignified person. You walk with modesty. You walk with dignity. Tznius is even the privacy of your own room, even how you take a shower. It's not just how you dress for others. Tznius is a body language. It's an attitude. There could be people who are dressed tzniusdik, but they behave very not tzniusdik. And the other way around. Tznius is a state of mind. It's a state of being. How you see yourself. You see yourself, I'm a queen. I'm a princess. Kvuda bas melech pnima. Rise to the occasion. When you think of it that way, you're never going to ask. So let's now rephrase the question. What is the point of being modest? What is the point of being dignified? What is the point of being majestic? Once you translate tznius that way, no one's going to ask such a question. Of course I want to be dignified. Of course I want to be regal. You want to look and behave like a queen or like a shmata? So the attitude has to be that tznius has to be rephrased, especially in our time as well. It's a good opportunity to ask these questions and look deeper into any of these ideas. Next question. This question I actually answered, but I'll just rephrase it, or reiterate it. How will the world actually be like when Moshiach comes? Will we be living our lives like regular? And also, what will be our purpose when Moshiach comes? Because now we have the purpose of bringing it. So I described a little of what Moshiach will look like in the dry cleaners, in the pizza shops, in our homes, and so on. What will be the purpose? The purpose, it says, yes, today we have the challenge because we don't see godliness and we have to reveal it. Because the purpose of Moshiach will be to grow to greater heights. Today, we have to fight the concealment and we go from a place of darkness to light. But then there's growing in light itself. The expression, if good is better, not better, to grow into greater places and greater places. So instead of fighting disease and illness, like the Rambam says, and famine and exploitation, we will be growing from great strength to strength in knowing God, in appreciating godliness, and so on. Next question. What I'm going to do is, we have till 11, is that correct? Can someone just confirm that, right?
Yes, correct.
Okay. So we have another 7 minutes. And I'm sure there's some questions. So I'm going to do another 2 questions from this document. Hopefully we'll be able to have another opportunity to finish them. There's really many questions I received, so I can't do them all, but I'll try the best. Okay. So regarding the question about being scared of Moshiach, once you understand Moshiach the proper way, just like when you understand tznius the proper way, there's nothing to be terrified. The opposite. It's actually an opportunity and a great thing to look forward to, a better world like that. Next question. Why is it that some of us think we're different as a nation? We all think of ourselves different from among ourselves, when really we're one nation. The only difference is our religion and other religions. Okay, let me just explain the question. Basically, why do we think the Jewish nation is special more than all other nations? So here too, and again, this time and period that we have more time to think and be introspective is a great opportunity to answer this question and ask yourself. The Eibishter created 8 billion people on this planet. 8 billion. Not just 14.5 million Jews, Ken Yirbu. Why did he create them? Ever think about that? Because he wants them to serve God in their way. They have Sheva mitzvahs b'nei Neach, which, by the way, are not just 7 small little mitzvahs. If every Jew kept these 7 Noahide universal laws of civilization, the Moshiach would be here already. So everybody has a purpose. Everybody is special. Every blade of grass is special. So then ask yourself, so what does it mean, the chosen people? Why do we think we're more special? We have a special chosen role. That does not mean that other people on earth don't have a chosen role. And I think it's vital to understand that. So yes, we were chosen a specific role, which is not necessary to go into. I'll just say one thing. You know what our role is? Now, in the middle of coronavirus, to show leadership, to show the whole world, including the non-Jewish world, what it means to be a godly people, to be a mamleches kein and v'gei kodesh, to be a dignified people. So we have a unique role, but so does everyone else have their unique role. So our job here is not pulling rank and saying, oh, I'm better than you. This isn't a competition. In God's eyes, let me ask you, in the human body, who's the superior organ in the human body? Is it the brain? Is it the heart? Is it the liver? Is it the lungs? Is it your gallbladder? I mean, on and on. Each part is necessary. And if one part, God forbid, is not functioning, then all the parts will be compromised. That's how we have to look at it. So yes, we have a unique role and we have to live up to it, but it's not about I'm better than you and you're better or you're worse than me. One more question, and then I'll open this up for questions from you all. How do we have the proper and right reaction in such a hard situation? So I'm specifically saying this question now because I go back to what I began with. The right reaction is knowing that we have to stop thinking about ourselves too much. Yes, we have to do whatever we need to do about our health. But after that, we have to be thinking about what Hashem wants of us. That's the best way to react. What does God want? Why are we here today? You know, one day, very soon, Moshiach is going to come. Hopefully even today. We're going to look back at this time in 2020, in the end of the month of Adar, and the beginning of Nisan 2020, Tafshin Pei, in March 2020. And your children and our grandchildren will look and say, how did you behave during that epidemic? And we want to be able to answer exactly what the Rebbe would tell us to do. That we rose to the occasion. We took care of ourselves. We protected ourselves. We helped each other. But we did everything possible to bring tremendous light to the world. We were kinder. We were gentler. We were nicer. We did an extra mitzvah. We reached out to people that we may have not have reached out to. We volunteered. As young people, we know we have extra strength. We help people. We did everything in our power to show that as Jews have done on thousands of years, we marched ahead with confidence, hope, and betochen, yes, trust in Hashem, to do everything we can to continue to forge ahead. And with that, let's open this up. I know that we don't have that much time, but maybe we'll go a little extra. It's all up to you guys. So I'm happy to answer any questions that come up right now. If not, I have more questions to read here, but let's do that. And then I'll say a concluding bracha at the end.
If you have any questions, you can unmute yourself and ask.
The girls are shy, huh?
People ask questions in the chat box.
I see 31 questions. Oh boy. Okay. Okay, I'm not going to answer technical questions, how to log in, right? Okay, here's a question that says, I don't get it. In Tanya, we learn that we have to serve Hashem. Let me get a little closer here. And that we have to be selfless and do everything in the name of Hashem. Hashem created this world in order for us to serve him so that he can feel important. A king without subject isn't a king, but isn't that selfish? How could he tell us to be selfless when he himself is being selfish? I actually like that question. I appreciate you writing it. Thank you so much. And let me answer. First of all, let's just realize that God is not selfish. God does not need us. He could have not created the world in the first place, and he could have not created all of us. So you have to understand that when it says that God wanted us to serve him, and that God wanted us to have a nation, a melech b'layam, a king without a nation, it was not for him, it was for us. He chose that. He gave a human being, a mortal human being, a simple person like us that eats and sleeps and drinks, and we're born and we die after Me'ev Esrim Shana, that we have the capacity to touch the infinite, to touch Hashem, to be one with immortality. Isn't that a gift? Imagine we did not have that, God forbid. So all your lives would be is survival. We take care of ourselves, we eat, we drink, make some money, have some fun, enjoy ourselves. And that's it, fight it. God gave us an opportunity to be godlike, to be connected to something that lasts forever. Think of Avram and Sarah, since I mentioned them. They lived 3,800 years ago. They could have been regular people, good people, and then they died and were buried. No, we talk about them today as if they're alive today. They lived on because they became godly people. That's what Hashem gave us, a gift. So yes, he bound himself. He says, you know what? For me to give you this gift, I want to be connected to you like you're connected to me. So he calls himself. He chooses to marry us. Does he need to marry us? No, but he wants a relationship. So a relationship is a reciprocal one. But never think that Hashem had to have this relationship. He wanted to have it. And once he wanted it, he gave us the tremendous gift. And God too has pleasure because that's what he wants. He wants such a relationship. And he wants us to connect in that fashion. In a time like this, when we have a challenge, why doesn't Hashem just intervene? Why doesn't he just eradicate or not bring the illness in the first place? Because he wants a relationship. He wants us to rise to the occasion. He wants us to be the best we can be. If God gave everything to us on a platter, if he gave everything to us in a way that's like a gift, what's our role? Where's our partnership? So we'd rather not have negative moments, but sometimes that brings out the best in people. Okay. You tell me when we have to have cutoff, because I'll just continue unless you tell me otherwise. Let's go to another question. A lot of questions here. How do we know that we didn't mess up after Gimel Tammuz and that everything the Rebbe says still stands? Okay. Excellent questions. I see you're really thinking. I'm glad to hear that. I love these questions. They're provocative and they are solid. So, first of all, the Rebbe said when he became leader in Tafshin Yud Aleph, the famous Maimer Bosligani, the Rebbe said, we are the seventh generation. Not through our will, not through our choice, not through our work. That's how it is. The Alter Rebbe is the first generation of Chabad. Friedrich Rebbe is the sixth generation. The Rebbe Rashab the fifth. The Friedrich Rebbe the sixth. We are the seventh. Whether we like it or not. That you can't mess up. There's nothing we can do to change that fact. So we are the end of a process of 7 generations of Chabad, of 90 generations or more from Moshe. And think of all of history, every mitzvah ever done, every Mesiras Nefesh and sacrifice is like a building block. Those building blocks never disappear. They all build the building called Moshiach. Then there comes a point where it accumulates. Think of like a positive volcanic eruption. It erupts into a revolution, a spiritual higher consciousness revolution of good and kindness. All that cannot be erased. You can't turn the clock back. So yes, Gimel Tammuz may indicate that there's been a concealment and indicate that we have to do more. The Rebbe said, I did everything I can, now do what you can. Gimel Tammuz makes it very clear because we don't have the Rebbe physically doing it, so we must do it. So I look at it on the contrary. Gimel Tammuz makes it even more compelling and behooves us even more to do something. Ask yourself, each one of you, what did I do today to bring Moshiach? To sit here and start philosophizing and analyzing and saying, maybe we messed up and maybe it's over with. Let me ask you, what's the practical result of such a conclusion? Let's say, God forbid, you're right. What's the conclusion? Okay, we messed up. Now what? We go to sleep? Now what? We sit around and count how many people are getting sick in the coronavirus? No. We were trained to be soldiers. We have to be active, proactive, and forge ahead. There are times we have big questions. I have many questions about Gimel Tammuz. It's not an answer for me, it's a question. We have questions about the Holocaust. We have questions about the coronavirus. We have questions for every senseless loss and death in this world. But at the same time, we are part of an army, a marathon that's been here for 3,800 years, and now is our leg of the journey. You were passed the baton by people who paid heavy prices. Think about your grandparents and great-grandparents and great-great-grandparents. They sacrificed their lives, begashmis, in the worst of times, and now the baton has been passed to us. So we don't understand Gimel Tammuz, we don't understand a lot of things, but we must continue running the marathon. It would be a disgrace, it would be a dishonor, it would be the worst possible scenario. Imagine your parents and grandparents, great-great-grandparents looking in heaven and saying, we ran a marathon for 3,800 years, and you decided your comfortable little life in 21st century America or wherever you are, no, Gimel Tammuz came, I have other things to do. Is that the attitude? Absolutely not. I don't mean to be so harsh, but that's exactly what we were charged to do. The Rebbe said, I did everything I can, do what you can. Until you can answer, I did everything I can, you cannot come with excuses and say Gimel Tammuz and this thing and that thing. To me, that's a cop-out. That's a scapegoat. Adults are proactive. You don't look for excuses. We look, what can we do in a given situation? That's what your parents should be doing. That's what you should be doing. And Mr. Hashem, one day you'll be parents and your children, let's say, are not well, God forbid, or something else happening. You don't say, oh, maybe I messed up. You say, what can I do to make my life better, to make my children's life better? What do we do time-wise? I'm asking the moderator. Next question. Okay. We can go until Moshiach comes if you like. I don't know if you'll have the patience, but we could try. Okay, another question. I'm just, there's so many questions here, I just have to randomly choose. Okay. We learn in Hayom Yom that when Moshiach comes, the ground will talk to us. But if I've walked on the same ground multiple times and said words of Torah 5 to 7 times, will the ground still tell me I didn't speak words of Torah? Because I did speak words of Torah, just not every time I walked on that ground. I have to say, I'm enjoying you guys. Great questions. Excellent. Look, I'll be very honest. I've also walked the ground many times, many places. I cannot say every time I walked on every ground there was a Torah said by me or thought by me. Hashem wants us to be as best as we can. There's an expression, God does not ask us for something that we're not capable of. He only asks what you're capable of. You don't have to be me, I don't have to be you. You don't have to be your mother or your father, you don't have to be your teacher. You have to be you. Famous story of the Rab Zusha, who was crying in a corner. Why are you crying? He says, I'm not crying because I'm not like Avram Avinu. I'm not crying because I'm not like Sarah, like Yitzchak, Yaakov, and so on, like Moshe Rabbeinu. I'm crying whether I will be asked, was I like Zusha? Will I live up to my potential? So I believe the following. We have to do the best we can, especially today. Every opportunity you have, yes, to say a word of Torah, to think of Hashem, to think of the Rebbe, to think of your shlichus in life. How can you make your little room, your home, a little nicer place, especially in these circumstances? That's what you're asked for. And the walls and the ground absorb every mitzvah you do. And yes, when Mashiach comes, they will declare and proclaim, these are the things you did. So I don't think we should be focusing on what we didn't do or the negative things. Focus on the positive. And the more you do it, the more your walls and your rooms and your homes will be saturated with Kedusha. As the Rebbe said, Migdash, make your home into a Migdash, Ma'at, into a mini sanctuary, and those walls will forever remember that. Okay. Do bad things happen as a result of our actions? Like if I didn't daven one day, or I wasn't nice, will Hashem do something bad? We don't think like that. Remember, Hashem is not some angry principal or angry parent sitting, waiting to punish us when we misbehave. When we do something negative, just like when we do something positive, I'll give a very simple mashal, very easy to understand. Would you, for example, say that, God forbid, if somebody puts their hand in a fire, that the fire is punishing you by burning you? Chas v'shalom. It's cause and effect. A hand doesn't belong in fire, and the fire is reminding you, don't put your hand in fire. When you eat a healthy piece of food, that's nutritious. So the food is rewarding you? No, it's cause and effect. A mitzvah comes from the word connection. When you do a mitzvah, you are connecting with Hashem's power that mitzvah is drawing down into your life. You give tzedakah. So the chesed in you is being nourished by you giving tzedakah, by being charitable. God forbid, if you say something negative to someone, you create negative energy that causes and can have a negative impact. So we don't look at it this way, that a person does something bad, God punishes you. We have to look to always be good. We don't look in terms of punishment and reward. And if we do something negative, we have to remember we have to do something to repair it and make it better. But it's more cause and effect than anything else. And the last thing you want is to be thinking, oh, somebody got sick, I must have done an Aveda. No, we don't think like that. If something happens, you have to look inside your heart and see how you can improve. We always have to look at how we can improve. And the last thing you can never do, never point your fingers at other people and say, they did something bad, and that's why this happened. You always have to look at yourself, not to blame yourself, but to look at how you can become a better and healthier person. Okay. I see what you were saying, 5 minutes left. We have one more question. Okay. It says in Hayom Yom that the Tzemach Tzedek said that if you knew the power of Tehillim, you would say it all the time. To say this, you have to know the power of Tehillim. So why wasn't he constantly saying it? So I'm not here to explain to you the Tzemach Tzedek. First of all, how do you know he wasn't saying Tehillim all the time? We weren't there, and even those that lived at the time didn't know everything that Tzemach Tzedek was doing. The point of the message is that Tehillim has tremendous power, and the more you realize how it could pierce heavens and how it could bring Rachamei Shamayim, God's compassion on us, the more we would do it. If you knew, like I said before about a mitzvah, if you knew the positive impact you do of doing a good deed, you wouldn't stop doing it. Now, obviously, there's a time we're asleep. There's times when we're eating. There's times when we're davening. There are times we're doing other mitzvahs. You can't be saying Tehillim all the time. The point he's making is that if we knew its impact every free moment, we would say it. And there were Taka Noshim Sitkonyas. I myself saw them and still see them, who say Tehillim every free moment they have. Can all of us do that? I'm not telling you what to do. But basically, it's appreciating that the words of Tehillim, Hashem blessed the words of David HaMelech, that these words should forever be words that are like magic. I don't mean the word magic in the magic way. It's like pressing the right buttons that can draw down extraordinary brachas, which of course we need, especially in our time. So I assume we're going to conclude with this question. Now, obviously, I feel frustrated a bit because there are many, many good questions. I haven't covered maybe half of them. But you all asked great questions, and I want to commend you for that. Because, remember, Shailas Chacham Chesed Tshuva, the question of a wise person is half an answer. I tried my best to answer, and hopefully many of those answers I gave can help in other questions as well. But I want to encourage you, and this is my concluding few words for this class. I want to encourage you. You are special souls in a special time. Hashem does not do things by accident. The fact that we are here today, that you are here today, and you have the schus to be, in the Rebbe's Amoisid, the Rebbe's organized school called Beis Rivkah, which means that the Rebbe's children, you're the Rebbe's soldiers. You're the Rebbe's Noshim and Bones Tzidkonius, the righteous women of this generation, the ones that will lead us to Geula. So I can't explain why God suddenly sent this pandemic to us. But I could say this without question. You have special keiches, special strengths, faculties, and opportunities. You may say, I'm a little girl. Who am I? I'm a small person. I'm not a leader. No, but you're Hashem's child in this time. So take it seriously. This is a historical time. It may be the most definitive event in our entire lifetimes. We'll never know. Obviously, Moshiach will be the most definitive. But for now, so we have a special opportunity in babies, and it's not how big of a thing you do. Every kind act you do now, every act of volunteering, anything you do to help someone, a nice word to your parents, controlling some of your frustration, some act of learning Torah, learning Chassidus, teaching, maybe getting on the phone and learning with a friend, especially someone in need, kind words, an extra mitzvah, an extra tefillah, extra kapitel tilim. This is going to have historical, eternal impact, now more than ever, because the world is in a situation of crisis. Everybody is wondering what will be. People are very frightened. People are fearful. Do not know. Every day brings new challenges. So we're all in the same boat, but we have one extra thing, that you are soldiers and have the strength of the Rebbe, of Chassidus and Torah, to forge ahead and show in your own way leadership. Be proactive. Make things happen. Don't just wait for things to happen. Be creative. What could I do today that I didn't do yesterday? What could I do tomorrow? And I think if we put our heads together, the synergy creates even more power. And I have no question the Rebbe is watching us, giving us keiches, that we do our little part. The Eibishter will have his rachmanis. The Rebbe will intervene for us, and we'll be able to be zeichet to put this little aleph in this last final steps of Golus, this moment of darkness, and bring the Geula Amitis Vashlema, and we will be able to say that we were the people at the front line, the last leg of the long marathon of Golus, the last leg in Tofshin Pei, 70 years from the Rebbe's leadership, 100 years from the Rebbe Rashab's Talkus and the Frierdiker Rebbe's leadership, that we ran the last leg with a baton to the finish line, and it should be taken from Miyad Mamish. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Rabbi Jacobson, for giving us clarity and words of inspiration during this time. Hope that will continue with Moshiach. Have a good day, everyone.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Who is that?